Welcome to Game Changers with Molly Fletcher, where we take you behind the scenes with peak performers to learn what makes them tick and discover how you can apply their lessons to your life. I'm your host, Molly Fletcher. Dr. Mark Hyman is leading a health revolution centered on using food as medicine to support longevity, energy, mental clarity, and happiness. He's a practicing physician and an internationally recognized speaker, educator, and advocate in the field of functional medicine. Dr. Hyman is the founder and director of the UltraWellness Center, the head of strategy and innovation of the Cleveland Clinic Center for Functional Medicine, and a 14-time New York Times bestselling author. He hosts the podcast, The Doctor's Farmacy, and is a regular contributor on television shows like Today, Good Morning America, and The View. In his latest book, Young Forever, Dr. Hyman shares the secrets to living your longest, healthiest life. On this episode, we talk about the simple dietary lifestyle and emerging longevity strategies to help you optimize your health. Years ago, I had an opportunity to work out and spend some time with Dr. Hyman and quickly became a fan of his work. You know, to me, as a 51-year-old post-menopausal female, I got to tell you, I grab and lean into about anything I can relevant to living a healthier, longer life. I want to dance at all my girls' weddings, and I want to dance with their kids at their weddings. Making decisions today about the way we spend our energy, the food we intake, the things that we can do to maximize our health. These are things that are paramount to living our longest, healthiest, best life. If you're a health nut like me, you're going to want to take notes on this one. Here's my conversation with Dr. Mark Hyman. So your new book, Young Forever, it's out now.
It is.
That talks about the secrets of living your longest, healthiest life. Get me inside of the big idea, if you will, inside of the book.
Well, the big idea is that we've come to accept the problems that occur with aging as normal. You know, being more disabled, dysfunctional, frail, getting sick, not being able to do the things we love to do, and having sort of a slow decline into the twilight of our life. And the big idea is that that is actually a disease. That getting older is not a disease. I'm not against aging. I'm against abnormal aging. And that's what we see around us, the slow decline in disability. And it's true because 80% of us over 65 have one or more chronic diseases. We are struggling as a nation with 93% of us metabolically unhealthy, on their way to a heart attack, stroke, and diabetes and dementia. And that's just what seems normal, but it's not. It's a consequence of abnormal processes in the body that we can actually treat. And so the thinking now is that aging might in fact be a disease, a treatable disease, and that the fundamental shift in our thinking has to do with these concepts called the hallmarks of aging, these fundamental things that seem to go wrong that are influenced by our lifestyle, our diet, stress, toxins, exercise, our thoughts, pretty much everything is registered through these basic biological systems that have to be working well for us to be healthy, and they get dysregulated because of all our bad habits and stresses and everything else. And in cultures where they actually naturally do the right thing, they're not like going to the gym, they're not going to buy kale at the supermarket at Whole Foods, they're not taking their vitamins, but they by default have built into their culture habits which are longevity habits. And these are called the blue zones. Dan Putner, my friend, has written a lot about this. And what we can learn from that is that the body has the capacity to age well. You know, I met a guy named Pietro who was 95 years old. He was a shepherd, and he was like straight upright, looked clear in the eye, booming voice, mentally sharp, physically robust, and he literally been just herding his sheep 5 miles a day up and down rocky terrain. I mean, I don't think I could walk 5 miles a day up and down mountains every day. And here he was doing this at 90 plus years old. That's the capacity we have. All of us living today have the capacity to get to 100 in good health if we follow the basic instructions that our bodies require to function well. And that's what I cover in Young Forever. It's basically an owner's manual of how do you take all this amazing geeky science and how do you translate it into a practical regimen, a program that you can individualize for yourself to optimize your health.
And it is awesome. I mean, it is a wonderful manual, as you said, and there's so much in there. And I love how you talk about it, Mark. You talk about the difference between lifespan and health span.
Yeah, well, it sort of speaks to what I was talking to before, that the last 20% of people's life is spent in poor health. So their health span might be 60 years old, their lifespan might be 80, and the last 20 years are not fun. Doctor visits, hospitalizations, medications, surgeries, not being able to do what you want to do in life. And so we want to have our health span equal to our lifespan. And there was an amazing study in 1980 by James Fries, published in the New England Journal of Medicine. And it was just talking about 3 simple things that had a profound impact. Not all the new discoveries, not all the advances I talk about in Young Forever, not all the dialed in things we talk about with nutrition, but just basically 3 things. 1, you keep your ideal body weight. 2, you exercise. And 3, you don't smoke. And if you do those 3 behaviors, you basically will have your health span equal to your lifespan. I mean, you'll live a long, healthy life and then die. As opposed to if you didn't follow those behaviors, you would die a long, slow, painful, early death. And so that's just what we call the compression of morbidity. We compress the days that you're sick in your life to maybe a couple, and not have this kind of long, slow decline. So I think that's what's so exciting to me is learning that, as I get older, I'm 63 now, I've learned actually how to get physiologically younger. Like my body looks better than I did when I was 43. My brain is working better. My energy is better. I feel like I have kind of figured out through this science how to dial in my own biology, and I've done this for thousands of patients and people all over the world. And I think it's just unexpected because people don't think you can age in reverse. But this is not just an abstract idea. There's something actually called biological aging, as opposed to chronological aging. We can't change that. And scientists now have figured out how to measure through an epigenetic clock our biological age. So we can now do interventions, say, okay, change your diet, do this, do that. And we can literally see whether or not it reverses your biological age. In some studies, they've been able to reverse biological age by 3 years and 8 weeks by changing lifestyle and diet. That's dramatic.
It's unbelievable. And you talk about the core longevity principles, Mark, which I think are really interesting, right? Avoiding processed foods, all quality sleep, strength training, all these things. Get me inside of those a little bit, because I would imagine those are behaviors, beliefs that if we deploy them in our lives, it supports longevity.
Yeah, so when you look at these blue zones, they really were a few fundamental things. One, their diet was amazing. They basically had a diet that was full of phytochemicals, all local, unprocessed, not organic by design, but by default, and they ate animals that lived close to the land that were regeneratively raised, even though they didn't call it that, which basically were, kind of roaming around eating whatever they could eat. And the food part is such an essential thing that, we've deviated from. And 60% of our diet's ultra processed food. That just has to go. Sugar and starch have to go. That's not to mean they didn't even have sweets or treats. They did, but I was in Ikari and they had like little candied like lemons for dessert. And then the second thing was they moved naturally. They just literally moved their bodies as a consequence of their like gardening, just doing manual labor, herding their sheep, and they really had a natural movement throughout their life. They also had, the stresses were different. I met this guy Silvio who lived on top of this mountain, had about 200 goat and sheep. And he'd been doing this for centuries. And I said, so Silvio, do you have any stress in your life? And he looked so puzzled. And he was very confused by the question. He thought for a while and he's like, well, yes. Sometimes at night, a goat gets out and I have to go get it.
That's outstanding.
That was his stress. Okay. And then the last thing is they have a deep sense of community. So there's a deep sense of belonging, connection, meaning, and purpose. We know that if you have meaning and purpose in your life, you'll extend your life as much as if we got rid of all heart disease and cancer on the planet. Like that's
Wow.
mind-blowing to me. Think about it, 'cause
Wow.
getting rid of the number 1 and 2 killers, how much would that extend our life? Maybe 5 to 7 years. How much does it extend our life if we have meaning and purpose? 7 years. So those are really powerful statistics. And I think they naturally have all those things. So those are really core. Getting our sleep dialed is really important. We're sleep deprived. Optimizing our metabolic and nutritional state is super important. So in terms of the diet, it's really getting off of the things that are killing us: starch, sugar, processed food, and flour products, and adding those things in that help us age well, which are good fats, lots of phytochemicals, colorful, rich diet of plants. And then protein is very controversial, but it's really important. We can dig into that if you want, but it's something that becomes more essential as we get older, because most of us lose muscle as we get older, and that's what makes us frail and dysfunctional. So if you look at a picture of me when I'm 40 and 62 or 3, I have dramatically more muscle at the same weight, right? That's because I've figured out how to optimize my protein synthesis, my muscle synthesis with diet and exercise. So that's a key longevity principle. If you kind of forget everything else you listen to in this podcast, if you make sugar and starch an occasional recreational treat and get them mostly out of your life, and obviously all ultra-processed food, there's no role for that, right? I mean, and all these, and by the way, there's a lot of, quote, health foods that are ultra-processed food, and maybe you heard the news lately that at Cleveland Clinic, they did very rigorous studies on erythritol and artificial sweeteners, and one of the sugar alcohols. It's in a lot of the keto products, healthy products, quote, healthy products, and it had a dramatic increase in the risk of heart disease, and heart attacks. So, and they did mechanistic studies. They did, it really affects clotting in the blood. So they were able to replicate this, not just in, population studies, but actually in clinical studies. So that's terrifying to me. So we're eating a lot of this ultra processed food. That has to go. That second thing is resistance training with protein. So no starch, sugar, processed food, protein, and resistance training. Resistance training is weightlifting, body weights, bands, whatever works for you, but you've got to build those muscles. And then you have to eat protein. As you get older, you have to make sure you have protein within an hour or two after exercise. And you need at least 30 grams to activate muscle synthesis. And you need at least 2.5 grams of leucine, which is a particular amino acid that's like the switch. It's like the ignition switch on actually building muscle. The problem is plant proteins are very low in leucine. So you need to actually either supplement with amino acids or have jacked up plant proteins with extra protein and extra amino acids. It's possible, but it's a lot harder to do than if you just have a little piece of chicken or fish or meat or a whey protein.
What do you eat after you go left? What do you eat after you strength train?
What I do is really simple. I have a healthy aging shake. It's the recipe's in the book, and it includes a lot of things in addition to the whey protein. I use goat whey. I use regeneratively raised goat whey, which is a little more expensive, but I actually like it, and I think it's very anti-inflammatory compared to like regular whey. Although you can buy a regular whey too. I add in a bunch of stuff. I add in MitoPure, which is a urolithin A compound that's been shown to enhance muscle growth and function, as well as mitochondrial function, and helps with mitophagy and a lot of the cellular cleanup that needs to happen as we age, and increases fitness level without exercising. I put in extra creatine because of what we call anabolic resistance. As we get older, it's a little hard to build muscle, and creatine helps build muscle. I also put in adaptogenic mushrooms, and I put in berries, and I put in my gut food product, which is, you can go to getfarmacy.com and find it. It's essentially something I designed to help myself when I was really sick with gut issues. So it's pre and probiotics and polyphenols. So I create this cocktail, and it's really yummy. It's really delicious. And it's what I do after I work out. And I notice if I'm on the road and I travel and I don't have it and I work out, I notice a change.
Well, I mean, I'm thinking this is another vertical for you. I mean, let's package that bad boy shake up and let's sell it, man.
It would be very expensive. I mean, I think the goat whey is enough. Like if you can do goat whey and creatine, or whey protein and creatine for the average person, it's affordable. I mean, you can, depending on your resources, you can add the extra stuff, and that is incrementally better. But I think the whey protein is so key. And it also boosts glutathione, which is important as we age for antioxidant regulation, anti-inflammatory regulation, detoxification.
Food is medicine, right? Food is fuel and gives us the energy that we need to live our lives. But I love the pyramid on page 224 of your book. You talk about the optimal longevity diet. Can you walk through that a little bit at some level? Because I think for some people, I mean, I geek out on all this stuff, Mark, but I'm sure there's some people that are like, wait, what do I eat for breakfast, lunch, and dinner?
Here's the thing. I have written food, what the heck should I eat? To
Yeah,
answer the question.
I got them all, dude.
I've written food, what the heck should I cook? And then if that was all too much and too detailed, I wrote a simplified version called the Pegan Diet, which is kind of short, 25 principles to follow. And essentially, I go through every food category and break it down into what's the best. Like if you're going to eat animal food, what's the best way to do it? If you're going to have dairy, what's the best way to do it? If you're going to have grains, what's the best way to do it? And if you're going to eat vegetables, what are the best vegetables? So basically there's a roadmap. And so at a very high level, it's eat real food, it's eat high quality protein, lots of fruits and vegetables, nuts and seeds, lots of good fats, get rid of the junk and processed food, and make sure you give yourself 3 hours before you go to bed to finish eating. Make sure you give yourself a 12 to 14-hour window between dinner and breakfast. And you just follow those principles, that's like enough. If you want to go way into the details, like, okay, well, what really is good? You can add a little extra this, a little extra that. I think it's in the book. But I think, we can go way in if you want. I'm just thinking, like, how do we keep it at a high level? People are like, okay, what are the principles? It's not that hard. It's like, get off the crap, eat real food, get enough protein as you age, lots of phytochemicals, feed your microbiome, and make sure you have lots of good fats and stay away from the starch and sugar, which is really driving the underlying mechanism of aging, is insulin resistance. So, when we look at a high level, what's causing all these hallmarks of aging, what's driving so much of the problem, the majority of it is driven by our high starch sugar diet, which is driving this pathway called insulin signaling pathway. It interferes with sirtuins, with AMPK, with mTOR in a way that actually causes more rapid aging. So if you were to sort of look at all the age-related diseases, they're fundamentally all connected to insulin resistance or this spectrum of prediabetes.
Get me inside of Mark Hyman's diet, your daily intake.
Okay, well, let's see. Yesterday I had my healthy aging shake after I worked out in the morning.
So nothing for breakfast, no coffee, no tea.
Oh yeah, no, I'll have a coffee.
I'm talking everything, dude. Get me inside of it.
I'll have a coffee. Coffee.
Do you put any cream and sugar in it, or is it black?
I have this adaptogenic creamer from this company called Autonomy, which was just launched. Essentially, it's a little MCT oil, but nut butters and a lot of adaptogenic mushrooms. So it's a kind of little superfood coffee shake that I make. Then I'll have a workout. I'll have my healthy aging shake. I'll usually do like a hot and cold treatment with my steam shower and a cold bath. And then for lunch, I'll usually have like I call a fat salad. So I'll have I like my favorites like arugula. I throw in an avocado, some cherry tomatoes, pumpkin seeds, and olive oil. So I've got like olive oil, avocados, and pumpkin seeds for fat. And then I add in a can, I usually have something like sardines or, mackerel or salmon to get omega-3s and a little protein. For dinner last night, I had a Japanese purple sweet potato. I had a maitake mushroom, roasted maitake mushroom soup. Mushrooms are incredibly healthy for your body. They have a lot of polysaccharides, which are anti-cancer, immune regulating, particularly maitake. I had elk. I found a place called North Star Bison, another company that they basically sells kind of raised wild animals like venison, bison, elk. There's a lot of companies out there like Forest of Nature and others where you can order direct from the farm. So I order that. I'll often have bison or elk or venison. Sometimes they'll have like fish. There's a company called Seatopia.fish where you can get regeneratively raised, farm-raised fish, which is really hard to find clean fish without toxins. And it tastes so different and so good, actually, because you can tell the difference.
Yeah.
So I'll have that. And then I might have a square of dark chocolate or something after if I want something sweet.
What about snacks?
I don't really snack. I think snacking is an American invention. I think it's a bad idea. I don't think we need it.
Okay.
It's the worst. It's the worst. What are you going to? I mean, listen, I'm hungry. If it's like before dinner and there's going to be a couple hours, I might have a handful of nuts or something. But if you eat right and you regulate your blood sugar and your insulin levels, you will not be hungry. And hunger occurs because of swings in blood sugar. And swings in blood sugar occur because of eating starch and sugar. So, for example, I have my protein shake. I have to kind of remind myself to eat lunch because I'm not even hungry.
Oh, wow.
Right?
Okay.
I think a lot of people have like carbs for breakfast and then they have a crash in the late morning and they want some more carbs. And breakfast in America is cereal, bagels, muffins, French toast, pancakes. I mean, it's a nightmare. Sweetened coffees. It's really driving so much of aging.
I too want to live to be about 120, 150 like you do, Mark.
Party.
But I want to be healthy, right? I want to feel great. But how awesome would that be, right? I mean, a lot of our listeners are middle-aged men and women. They want to get better every day. They love to feel good physically, mentally, emotionally. What would you tell a 50 plus or minus year old person who's working hard, getting after it, fair amount of stress, traveling a little bit? What would you say are the top things that they need to maybe start doing, stop doing?
Really easy. I mean, I would say keep it simple, right? Cut out starch, sugar, processed food, have protein and fat for breakfast. Take a 12-hour minimum overnight fast and don't eat 3 hours before bed. That's just simple, powerful rules. Add a lot more plants to your diet and vegetables, and then pick up resistance training. I do this when I'm on the road. I do it everywhere. The bands throw like it's, I don't know, maybe a pound or less, throws in my suitcase. I've got a regimen I use. I use the Tom Brady training program. It's called TB12 Sports. You can get the bands online. You can go get the app. It's $50 a year. You can do it on your own. You don't need a trainer. It's great. It's really great. I also recommend prioritizing sleep. Sleep is so important, and I think people do not get high quality sleep. And it's the biggest predictor of so much of longevity and health, because if you're not sleeping well, your brain doesn't clear out, your body can't repair and heal, your metabolism gets screwed up, you crave more sugar and carbs. And so really getting good sleep is so important.
Get me inside of your regimen relevant to supplements. I buy all the Pure brand, right? Which I know. I have so many, Mark, bottles all over because I try everything, right?
So in the book, I go through like there's a supplement on food, on exercise, on all of it, right? And so there's a chapter on supplements. What are the basics? What sort of we looking down the road as things we could try depending on our appetite? So the first thing is basic multivitamin, fish oil, and vitamin D. I mean, I love Omega Rejuvenate from Big Bold Health because it has the highest levels of resolvins, which are basically these anti-inflammatory things that are in omega-3s that are so important. I use about 5,000 of vitamin D a day, vitamin D3. With K2, I'll use a good multivitamin. And then everything else is kind of like whatever. I take magnesium at night. For longevity, I think there's a few things that are really important that I've been taking. NMN or NR, which is precursors to NAD. I'll take something called MitoPure, which is the urolithin A, which is really important. I'll also take gut food, which is my product for keeping a multivitamin for my gut. And then I'll make sure that I'm taking quercetin. And I take a combination of senolytic compounds like fisetin and green tea and quercetin and curcumin as a cocktail. So that's my basic regimen. I do a bunch of other stuff too, but that's my basic regimen.
And so no vitamin B, is that what I heard? Do you take a vitamin B? Do you take a B complex?
I take a multivitamin.
It's got that B in it.
Yes. I have a methylation problem genetically, which means I can't process B vitamins so good. I take a homocysteine support formula, which is basically B12, folate, B6, and some other stuff.
So that's interesting. I mean, you're not taking a ton. You're taking.
Oh, no, I take more, but that's like.
Those are the ones that are more generic for most people. You've got some other circumstances that, you're right, I've read about that.
I take mitochondrial support. I take CoQ10. I take carnitine. I take a lot of things from my mitochondria. I take also. Yeah, I take something called HTB Rejuvenate, which is a incredible product from Big Bold Health that actually just had some preliminary data that showed just using that alone reversed biological age using epigenetic studies, not changing anything else, which is very impressive. And it's from Himalayan tartary buckwheat, which is a superfood from the Himalayas. It's got over 130 phytochemicals in it, some not found anywhere else in nature. Super anti-inflammatory, really works on immunorejuvenation and some of the senolytic pathways. So it has quercetin, luteolin, rutin, hesperidin, and other bioflavonoids, so to jojoba and other compounds. So I take that every day. That's really important.
Do you find yourself feeling like you don't have enough time? Like you're drained and burned out? If so, head over to mollyfletcher.com/webinar to access this free training and get my game-changing energy management framework. That's mollyfletcher.com/webinar. Start today and learn to have more energy for what matters most. There's all these trends, right? I mean, and we see this all the time, right? At some level, I'm sure it's nauseating to you. But I've gotten into these saunas and cold plunges, and I love it. Can you get me inside and share? It feels like that is helpful for longevity and feeling good. What's your routine around the sauna cold plunge?
Yeah, so this is a bigger concept here, which is important, which is called hormesis. Hormesis is the idea that what doesn't kill us makes us stronger. And the reality is we've been so protected in our modern lives. We are in perfectly controlled temperatures. We don't have to go without food. We don't have to move our bodies. So we're kind of getting soft. And the truth is we evolved in times of stress, and our bodies have these built-in innate healing system. We literally have a built-in longevity system that we just have to activate. And all the things that we talked about, diet, exercise, supplements can do that. But hormesis is a set of practices, and there's many of them, that you can include in your life to activate these ancient healing systems. Time-restricted eating, in other words, 12 to 16-hour overnight fast, longer fast. That's a stress to the body. The body goes, oh, I'm starving, I better do something, and that kicks in all the healing system. Exercise, resistance training, VO2 max training, really important. It's a stress to the body to lift weights and tear your muscles and run as fast as you can. It's a stress, but that activates the healing response. And then there's hot and cold therapy. Sauna therapy has been shown to reduce mortality by over 40%. If you do 4 times a week, that was compared to the control group, which was in Finland, which is once a week because everybody has a sauna in Finland. And it also increases heat shock proteins, which help repair and damage old proteins and recycle stuff. It activates your innate immune system. It helps cardiovascular fitness in many ways, detoxification, heart variability. Cold plunges also activate your metabolism, brown fat, mitochondrial function, and dopamine and other neurotransmitters, and it's great for pain, inflammation. Ozone therapy is another therapy I talk about, which is basically an oxidative stress that can be kicking the body into healing. Hyperbaric oxygen therapy, where you go in a tank and go under atmospheric pressure and high levels of oxygen. And that is a stress, but that kills more zombie cells and increases your telomeres more than anything else.
How often do you think you should do that?
I mean, hyperbarics is tricky. That's an expensive thing, and it's not kind of easy to get to. And it's but the studies showed like 60 sessions over 90 days had the profound effect. And it's not something you have to do all the time. You could do it like once every year, a couple of years. It's one thing that I want to do more of. It's just hard to get access to.
But there's places in towns, right? Like in Atlanta, where I'm based. I mean, they have these. And how long do you go in?
Well, it's an hour usually, an hour, so maybe or 90 minutes, but it's usually an hour. And then there's other therapies like hypoxia, which is another stress where you don't have enough oxygen, and that you can use a mask. You can buy $50 on Amazon. You can use cell gyms. You can use other technologies. Red light therapy, another kind of hormetic stress to the body, which helps with inflammation, mitochondrial repair. So there's a lot of various therapies out there that can be applied that can stimulate the body's own healing system.
Talk to me about alcohol, caffeine. Right. I mean, we live in this world, right, where people wake up and they get going. They have and then, the alcohol consumption, of course, really, the alcohol business was a hell of a business to be in during COVID, right? Like, let's just be honest. So it's sad, right? But get me inside of that a little bit.
Yeah, well, here's the deal. I wish it weren't so, but the truth is, as more and more data come out about alcohol, it shows that it's just not safe at any level. If you kind of want to minimize your risk of cancer and various other conditions like dementia, it's just it's a poison. And that doesn't mean you can't use it, just like sugar is a poison. It's the dose, right? So if you have a shot of tequila, once every week or two, probably not a problem. If you're having 2 glasses of wine or a glass of wine a day, that's a problem. And that increases your risk across the board. 1 glass of wine a day increases a woman's risk of breast cancer by 40%. So there really is no safe level. I think, that someone said to me the other day, what's the difference between sugar and alcohol? I said, well, you can die of acute alcohol poisoning. You really can't die of acute sugar poisoning. You could have, 3 bags of Chips Ahoy cookies. You're not going to die. If you have like 2 bottles of whiskey, you could die. So,
right.
So I think that's the difference. But it takes a little longer. But sugar is the number 1 cause of fatty liver disease, not alcohol anymore. Caffeine, I think, is a mixed bag. For some people, they're caffeine sensitive and it overactivates their stress response, cortisol, adrenaline, interferes with sleep. So you have to kind of pay attention to how you are. You can actually test for your genetics, but most people know. Like if I can have a cup of coffee and go right to bed, they're probably a fast metabolizer. If they're like, I have a cup of coffee in the morning and I feel like I, just had 10 lines of cocaine, probably not for you. So, although, coffee is a source of lactic acid and many phytochemicals that can be beneficial to us, it is the source of the most antioxidants in the American diet. But that's not saying much for coffee. It's just saying how bad the American diet is. And it's the main source of phytochemicals.
Right. So many people, I think, Mark, right now are feeling, burned out in their environment. And we hear that a lot. I hear that a lot. What are the most important things for someone to do to address the root causes of burnout?
I mean, look at your life. I think everybody has to kind of evaluate what is on their to-do list that's making them suffer. And how do we simplify our lives? How do we say no more? How do we, everybody's like, I have a to-do list. I have a to-don't list, and I try to sort of not overschedule my life. I try to make sure I have time in the morning to do the things that I need to do to take care of myself. I make sure I really restructure my life. So I was guilty as charged, not victim, I was a perpetrator of like a crazy lifestyle. And I had to reset my health system because it wasn't working. And I was trying to like go out there and save the world and change healthcare and, change the food system and change policy and write books every year. It was a lot. So I really had to look at what was going on in my own life that prevented me from, having a deeper state of health. And I meditate 20 minutes usually a day, sometimes twice a day. I make sure I do the practices that I'm talking about in the book, the exercise, the Hormesis. I've done that today, already worked out. I'm going to go it's snowed here, and so I'm going to go for a cross-country ski later this afternoon. So I basically try to design my life so that it's automatically setting me up for success and not overfill it.
How big of a role does stress play in longevity?
Oh, it's huge. I mean, there was an interesting study that was like, we think, oh, it's our diet, it's exercise, it's all this stuff, and it is all that. But what was interesting is that there was a study looking at animal studies. And we're like, well, what can animal studies teach us? Well, we're not animals, so sometimes the data doesn't cross over. But what they did was they looked at sort of heart disease, like atherosclerosis, plaque in the arteries, in rabbit models. And what they found was they kept, basically exactly the same diet, same activity, same environment for the rabbits in 2 arms of study, but except one arm had the rabbits taken out and cuddled by the researchers. They were touched and played with and cuddled. They had dramatically lower plaque and heart disease than the ones who didn't have the cuddling, even though everything else was exactly the same. So that speaks to something really powerful, which is the power of love, connection, touch, and human relationships, which are incredibly medicinal. So community is medicine. Friends are medicine. Love is medicine, right? And I think we forget that.
Do you, for meditation, do you do that pretty religiously every day and you don't deviate, I would imagine? You lean into that hardcore.
The truth is, I'm better at times than others, but I do find that when I do it, my life is immeasurably better. So I think 20 minutes is a pretty easy thing. If you can only do 10, do 10. But like I did it yesterday, I'm going to do it today. I find it really, really, really helpful. I
bought this brain tap device.
Oh, yeah.
Do you have one of those, Mark? You'd look good in that, man. Have you seen it?
I have, yes, I have. Yes.
Yeah, it's interesting. So what is your evening routine?
Evening routine is usually, try to eat dinner early enough, so like 6 o'clock, so I'm not going to bed on a full stomach. I tend to turn the lights down. I have blue blocker glasses to sort of limit blue light at night, which helps with melatonin and sleep production, sleep quality. I'll typically kind of wind down, get off devices, get off TV. I don't watch TV really that much, occasionally a movie, and tend to read at night and get into bed and spend maybe half an hour reading. And then kind of go to sleep. So I'll often do a hot bath with Epsom salt. I find that extremely helpful for me to reset my nervous system, to actually get my muscles relaxed, my body just reset. So I think there's an important concept that people can learn, which is you can reset your physiology from an outside influence. So sometimes, you're all stressed or tense or whatever, you can try to fix it with your mind, but that's really hard. So yeah, you can meditate, but it's much easier to jump in a cold bath or jump in a hot bath or jump in a sauna or go for a run or do something to change your state. So our physiology is accessible through all these different tools. So it's whatever you like and works for you. But I find a hot bath at night really, really helpful.
Yeah, that's awesome. How big of a role does purpose play, Mark, relevant to our ability to lean into all of this? Because this is, at some level, a part-time job for people, right? If we're going to really be intentional about the things we consume, the choices that we make, the workouts that we do, the sleep, the stress management, I mean, it is no joke and requires a ton of intentionality.
It does, but it also doesn't. Like if you look at like what are the ways to set up automatic ways for success? How do you structure your environment so that the defaults are the right choices? And so, yeah, if you don't have exercise bands, or you don't have the right food in your kitchen, you're not going to be able to eat healthy and exercise, right? So if you just have to set yourself up for success. And I got a lot going on. I don't spend that much time on this, maybe an hour or two a day, but it's also fun. I also like it, so it's not like a deprivation or problem. And I think if you prioritize this, everything else in your life gets better. Your mental health gets better, your mood gets better, your relationships get better, your energy gets better, your sleep gets better, your sex drive gets better. So the payoff is pretty high. But it's like anything else. If you don't have the defaults set up, it's very hard to succeed. So slowly you kind of build everything. So it's, for example, I sit down once a month and I put all my supplements in baggies, because I know there's no way I'm gonna be able to take everything from every bottle every day. It just takes too much time. Mm-hmm. So in the morning I have my shake, everything's on the counter. It takes me 3 minutes to make my shake. Take my supplements, it's in a baggie in the drawer. I just pull it out, take it. Makes it really easy.
I love that. That's fantastic. But your purpose, your why is central to driving that longevity at some level, right?
I mean, yeah, that connects to why I do the things I do. But the reason I do the things I do is so I can actually live better. It's not about living longer. It's about, I want to be able to show up for the people in my life I care about. I want to be able to add value in the world. I want to be able to do the things I need to do, I think, in my life to be an advocate for changing healthcare and changing food policy and elevate things that I can elevate in life. So, it's just my particular purpose. Everybody's got to find out what their why is. What's your why? And then that will guide them.
Tell me a little bit about the Function Health. And, by the way, I can't encourage people enough to grab this book, pick it up. I mean, I love sort of the back end of the book where it's really practical. I took all those tests, by the way. I got to just tell you, I was crushing all of them, Mark. I mean, I think I'm on my way. Tell us a little bit about Function Health, because it feels really interesting and pretty cool, because it's real solid data.
Absolutely. So, I've been doing functional medicine for 30 years and have been doing diagnostics on so many people. And I find so much going on under the hood that most doctors are just not checking, not looking for. And yet, I'm one doctor and I have, 4 other doctors in my practice at the UltraWellness Center, but we can only see so many people. We might be able to see 60 new people a month if we're lucky, right? There's millions of people who need to know what's going on with their health. And so I helped co-found a company called Function Health that is a lab. It's basically a tech company, but essentially it helps you access over 109 biomarkers, most of which your doctor would not do, that retail costs $15,000 for $500. And it allows you then to get an interface that will track all the data over time, that has, huge database of educational learning content about what it means, what to do, when to see your doctor, what lifestyle changes to implement, what supplements to take, what you might need to do if you go to your doctor to follow up tests, what medications that might be helpful. It's basically a very powerful, empowering tool for people to be empowered around their own health, to be the CEO of their own health. And you go to functionhealth.com, there's a wait list right now, but it'll open up slowly. And basically people are loving it and they're finding that it's the most comprehensive thing they've ever done with their health. And I think it's just like, you wear an Oura Ring or a Whoop or a Fitbit, you want to have data, but we can't get data in our own bodies because the doctors have the control over what tests we can do or not do. We can't go to a lab and say, I want these tests. They won't do it, right? So we've kind of had a bottleneck of the healthcare system, and it's so outdated, and the thinking in healthcare is so outdated, and most doctors are not learning about how to create health. And so we find all sorts of stuff. It's amazing. We find people with massive nutritional deficiencies. We found people with pituitary tumors. We found people with all sorts of different issues that they wouldn't have found, that immeasurably improve the quality of their life. So people can learn more about it and go see the functionhealth.com.
So just high level, I'm going to hit you with some rapid fire, Mark, and then we'll wrap this up. I appreciate it. So what are your top 5 to-dos physically, mentally, emotionally, relationally, and spiritually to live to be 120?
Top 5, pretty easy. I think, as I said, cut out sugar and starch, ultra-processed food, add phytochemicals, protein, and sort of the food part, really key. And give yourself a 3-hour break before dinner and 12 to 14 hours between dinner and breakfast. Just simple. Second is resistance training, super critical as you get older, and particularly whey protein after that for muscle building. Next is I would encourage people to build their social network. focus on friends and family and put in an investment of time to that. It is one of the most valuable things you can do in terms of your mood, happiness, well-being. So much is determined by the quality of our relationships and our friendships. And so social isolation and loneliness is equivalent to smoking 2 packs of cigarettes a day in terms of its risk on your health. So I can't emphasize that enough. And it's not as easy to do as you might think, but you can go to different organizations, whether it's faith-based organizations, different clubs, find people who have similar interests. You like racing, go to car races. If you like tennis, make sure you find someone to play tennis with. Just build those relationships. Taking the right cocktail of supplements, also really important. Again, multivitamin, fish oil, vitamin D. You want to add in a bunch of phytochemicals. My favorite stack is Vicine, quercetin, curcumin, green tea, and then, of course, the urolithin A from Mitopure and NMN. So those are really top. And then incorporate some Hormesis practices, hot and cold. Take a cold shower in the morning, hot bath, or get a sauna blanket or a sauna if you can afford it. A cold plunge if you like. Yeah, I just use my bathtub and fill it with cold water. Works pretty good. So those are the top things. And using that will make a huge difference.
So the show's called Game Changers. So who or what is a game changer, Mark, who inspires you and why?
Oh gosh, so many. I mean, one of them is my mentor, Jeffrey Bland, who's 77 now, has been tirelessly working in this field to advance functional medicine for 40 plus years, and is a visionary and incredible thinker and understands this sort of where things are headed before everybody else does. So he's a real game changer for me.
Mark Hyman, what a treat to have you on. Thank you.
My pleasure.
I first became focused on the importance of so many of the things Mark talked about from a long time friend, a gentleman by the name of Chris Johnson. And Chris has been a friend of mine since I was a student athlete at Michigan State. Chris has been a friend for years, a person that I lean into and go to constantly for support around food and health and all the things that often show up in our lives as new and quick hacks around health and fitness, food, et cetera, supplements. I go to my buddy, Chris Johnson, who is a fellow speaker and a longtime friend, and is really I would consider, personal health coach. On Target Living is his company, and Chris and his son, Matt, are both unbelievable, have written books, et cetera, but he is not a practicing physician nor a certified functional medicine doctor, but I do believe in so much of what he does. And if you spend any time listening to Chris, reading his books, listening to his son, Matt, they have an unbelievable podcast as well. He has been a guy that I lean into consistently for support and coaching relevant to all things health and fitness, in addition to, of course, Dr. Mark Hyman. Here are a few of my favorite takeaways from my conversation with Mark. Number 1, invest in relationships. Wow, how cool is this from a functional medicine guy who spends a lot of time talking about physical health, if you will, to invest in relationships. I couldn't agree more. One thing that you might not be considering when it comes to your health is relationships. But wow, the power of human connection is real. Building your social network is one of the most powerful things that you can do to protect your health. Amen. So good. Number 2, focus on your health span. Ooh, this is kind of a cool twist. There are hallmarks of aging that can be treated like any other disease. And we can't change chronological aging, but you can reverse your biological age through things like lifestyle and diet changes, making great decisions about what you put in your body can change the way you perform and show up, and also, of course, your health span. Number 3, find meaning and purpose. If you want to extend your life by an average of 7 years, create meaning and purpose in your life. We teach this in our energy training program with Game Changer Performance Group, but to me, this is paramount. And often we spend a lot of time, right, thinking about supplements and sleep and food and all those things. And that is obviously incredibly important. But so is purpose and meaning. This is incredibly important. Understanding our purpose and sharing our unique gifts, it allows us to tap into joy and fulfillment. And it in turn extends our lives. That's good stuff. Thanks, as always, for listening to Game Changers with Molly Fletcher. If you like the show, be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts. There you can listen to previous episodes and leave us a review, which helps other people find out about the show. This episode was edited and sound designed by the team at Sound On Studios. You can find out more about their work at soundonsoundoff.com. Check it out. For more about me, visit mollyfletcher.com. Until next time, stay curious and be bold.